Fleetwood Mac's ethereal songbird, Stevie Nicks, entered the spotlight and made an impact that went far beyond any harmony. Nothing would ever be the same after she revealed Ozzy Osbourne's darkest secret in that electrifying moment, shattering decades of myth. Imagine a bar in a foggy Los Angeles in 1979, where neon haze and cigarette smoke swirled around destiny. With her voice unbridled, Stevie Nicks swept across the throng like a moonbeam. Ozzy Osbourne was waiting to strike like a thunderbolt by the bar. A moment of electric quiet lingered as their eyes met, two souls created from opposing storms. She carried a serene accuracy refined by ballads in the moonlight. The wild pandemonium that sprang from Sabbath's rage blazed inside him. Harmony and chaos mingled in that tense pulse, and everyone held their breath, unaware of the earthquake that would be caused by their clash. Tension flared up like flint on steel as their careers rose to the level of superstardom. Recording studios, sacred spaces of creativity, were turned into battlegrounds where Stevie's meticulously crafted melodies were thundered by Ozzy's untamed, impromptu riffs. Imagine Muscle Shoals at night. As Ozzy, brimming with reckless energy, snatches Stevie's exquisite harmonies away with a nasty grin, dim lights flicker over twisted cables. He tears apart her expertly layered vocals in a single, heart-stopping moment and demands that she immediately write fresh lyrics. The delicate beauty of her song shatters under his capricious whim, and her eyes blaze with hurt and rage. A maelstrom of broken wood and unfiltered anger exploded from their dispute. Amps were quiet by the crash of rage, and guitars were flung across rooms. Once spoken in a spirit of cooperation, the words now flew like shrapnel. Echoing down deserted hallways were vows to never share a stage again. But there were things underneath the rage. In a more fundamental way. They were imprisoned in creative agony by a sinister obsession. Their craft gained depth with every conflict. Unspoken inspiration born out of a contradiction of ruin. However, another force slammed the door shut just as they were about to perform a groundbreaking duet. The intense jealousy of Sharon Osbourne. Alarmed by Ozzy's creativity being drawn to Stevie and the danger it posed to her own role, Sharon allegedly redirected session bookings, destroyed studio time, and whispered questions about Stevie's intentions into Ozzy's ear. The biggest battles occasionally take place far from the stage lights, as demonstrated by the domestic power play that took place behind the facade of rock royalty. It's all what I already stated. Everything has been excellent. Additionally, the individuals have been excellent. Additionally, the energy that has been put into it is very different from Jimmy Iovine's. This was no civil dispute. It was a full-scale attack on the souls of each other. Ozzy's whirlwind of pandemonium and Stevie's delicate, moonlight precision combined to create a tension so intense that it crackled in the air. Even though they promised to separate, the effects of that artistic conflict could be heard in every chord and sigh of a song that carried the wounds from their mutual collision. However, their feud storms were not limited to deserted hallways. They burst under the brightest lights as Ozzy's individual victories sparked a fierce media frenzy in which vilification and admiration engaged in an unrelenting conflict. Ozzy's individual victories sparked a fierce media frenzy in which vilification and love fought back and forth. Once impressed by his Sabbath legacy, critics turned their pins into daggers and proclaimed him a relic trapped in his own mythology. Sensing blood, the tabloids gorged themselves on every slip-up. Show cancellations turned into egregious betrayals. He was portrayed as a broken king in slurred interviews, and paparazzi were waiting like vultures to record his public disintegration. Tensions between managers and promoters erupted into a raging rage behind the velvet ropes. Contracts were torn up in dark backrooms, phone lines crackled with veiled threats, and deals fell apart in angry outbursts. When corporate objectives clashed with Ozzy's capricious whims, even rock stars were shown to be susceptible. Ozzy's volcanic outbursts clashed with Alice Cooper's poker-faced composure. Tales of fistfights in hotel hallways, midnight ambushes backstage, and their whispered feuds became industry legends as Lemmy Kilmister's uncompromising loyalty gave way under threats of sabotage. He was celebrated as a living icon for the day. At night, the tabloids he once courted pursue him like a fugitive of his own renown. The cycle of defiance and anguish was fueled by every headline and harsh review, creating a volatile mixture that only Ozzy could endure. He may have been deemed finished by his detractors, yet he always came out on top, his scars burning in the spotlight like combat medals from a life spent on the edge. Luxury concealed chaos behind the Osbourne estate's walls. Gilded rooms became battlefields as he was torn from Sharon's side by drugs and booze. Every relapse turned into a show for the public. Tabloids were splattered with rumors of custody and covert flings. But in brief hospital hallways, glimmers of the man he used to be appeared. The 1982 bat-biting incident, which burned its way into rock mythology, is most likely something you have heard about. Few, however, fully comprehend the magnificence and anguish of that night. The arena and the picture went dark. With just one spotlight shining on his silhouette, Ozzy rushed and buried his fangs into the leathery wing of a live bat. The stage was covered in blood. Incredulous fans screamed. And the Prince of Darkness sneered triumphantly down at his prize. It was a memorable deed that combined cruelty and spectacle. But when the IRS called years later, the real destruction was still to come. Ozzy had to deal with a barrage of court summonses and ruthless audits in 1997 that demanded $5.3 million in outstanding taxes. Imagine him in a sterile courtroom with harsh fluorescent lights in place of neon pyrotechnics, his refined stage armor taken off, and a guy who was quivering under the weight of financial devastation. As he negotiated legal filings rather than lyric sheets, reporters swarmed around him like vultures. The contradiction at the heart of Ozzy's character, a fearless rebel who could both terrify and plead for mercy, was exposed by these twin scandals, one of which was the result of reckless bravado and the other of financial desperation. He was a man whose darkest times only strengthened the mystique surrounding him, and the world watched as he teetered between being idle and being shunned. Even though the IRS's decision and the bat's wing may have broken others, Ozzy came out of the experience with fresh wounds and a newfound desire to take back his reign. Scarred but unbreakable, Ozzy rose from the ashes of his most intense battles. Concert halls from London to Los Angeles were ignited by the chords of the song that burst onto the global scene on December 12, 2007. Image with 75,000 pulses racing in Wembley Stadium crammed to capacity, Ozzy's voice pierced the night with a triumphal shout that appeared to defy all previous setbacks. But triumph came with its own wounds. The subsequent global tour was a trial by fire. Every night is a test of will and endurance throughout 120 cities over 14 unrelenting months. The unimaginable occurred in Tokyo amid a neon and steel conflagration. In the middle of the verse, years of backstage demon wrestling had cost Ozzy his thundering roar, which now trembled into a delicate whisper. As he gripped the microphone stand, regret and perspiration smearing his face like battle paint, fans gasped. Behind the scenes, he struggled with preoccupation and tiredness. Vendors of old amplifiers mused about Ozzy's late-night studio comebacks, when he sought flawless takes while hazed by fatigue and leftover painkillers. He awoke more and more exhausted every morning, his eyes hollowed down by self-confrontation and sleeplessness. His spirit, however, resisted breaking. A wave of defiance greeted every stutter on stage. He refused to be taken by the darkness. Amidst the quiet in between encores, rumors of past conflicts reappeared. Promoters are still stinging from contracts that were ripped apart in angry outbursts, Alice Cooper's subtly warned of treachery, and Tony Iommi's casual comment on trademark rights. They all hovered in the wings like specters, reminders that even atonement had a price. Ozzy continued despite everything, his tenacity serving as a rallying cry and his voice as a worn sword. His return to prominence after being on the verge of ruin was more than just a comeback. It was evidence of a warrior whose most intense conflicts took place in the shadows he created rather than in front of applauding crowds. The digital air crackled with astonishment and surprise as soon as Stevie's confession reverberated around the globe. Imagine a sea of screens that all light up simultaneously as Ozzy is revealed and blazed across timelines, with each post being a discovery. Both friends and adversaries threw caution to the wind, filling feeds with hushed confessions and suppressed memories that tore at the darkness of Ozzy's power. Behind the scenes, his closest associates frantically reacted to the sudden attack like generals. In hectic late-night meetings, managers went over crisis plans, and promoters considered the unimaginable, canceling stadium tours. Brands dipped their toes back, no longer eager to brandish his name. Their emblems are like tarnished metals falling off billboards. Nevertheless, a chorus of voices rose in defiance even as fortifications broke down. Roadies, session musicians, long silent pals, and survivors of rock's darker periods came forward with tales that broke the facade. Their remarks painted an environment based on fear and reverence as they described backstage whispered threats and loyalties bought and broken. In an instant, the fandom itself fell apart. With ragged vinyl and concert wristbands in rebellious homage, some held tenaciously to memories. Others who had just woken up searched dusty archives for hints of treachery concealed in liner notes. Every lyric and interview was examined by midnight live broadcasts, which looked for clues that would support Stevie's assertions. The question persisted like a haunting refrain throughout. What truths were concealed within the walls of every rock sanctuary if the creator of so many anthems could hold such darkness? Heavy metal's heartbeat skipped in that tense moment, and nobody knew if it would return in triumph or fade into regretful echoes. Bama believed that Ozzy Osbourne's tale was one of unrelenting chaos and raw lightning, a tribute to the man who used darkness as a weapon and broke all barriers in his way. From Birmingham's smoky clubs to stadiums filled with fireworks, his voice made a lasting impression on the music industry. His accomplishments are inextricably linked to his mistakes, bat bites, billions he avoided, and broken relationships. With equal parts key, eos, and charisma, every controversy is a brushstroke and a work of art. The legacy is not diminished by Stevie Nicks' revelation tonight. It changes its shape. Legends are characterized by the wounds they bore and the heights they reach in spite of them, not by the lack of flaws. Ozzy's legacy is more radiant due to its genuineness as he stands amidst the ashes of both admiration and indignation. He is still the Prince of Darkness, a fire-forged character whose secrets now shine through the intricate fabric of rock and roll.